The night my father told me they were taking my office space, he said it like it was nothing, like he was asking me to pass the salt. We were sitting around the dinner table, my mom smiling politely, my younger brother staring at his phone, and my dad looked at me and said, "We're taking your office space. Your brother needs it." Just like that. No discussion, no explanation. I nodded, took a sip of water, and said calmly, "Okay, I'll clear it." The thing is, that office wasn't just some spare room. It was the heart of the company I'd spent 5 years building for him. And what he didn't realize was that when I said I'd clear it, I meant everything. So tell me honestly, was I wrong for what I did next? To understand how things got that far, you need to know a little about my family. My dad has always been the kind of guy who believes respect means obedience. Growing up, he had this old-school mindset where the father's word was final, no questions asked. My mom mostly stayed quiet and kept the peace. My younger brother Jake was the golden child. Jake could do no wrong. If Jake failed a class, the teacher was unfair. If Jake got fired from a job, the boss was jealous. If Jake wanted something, well, somehow it always happened. Me? I was the responsible one. The quiet one. The one who worked. 5 years ago, my dad decided he wanted to start a small logistics company. He had the idea, but no real plan. At the time, I had just finished college with a degree in business and marketing. I was working a decent job. Nothing glamorous, but stable. When he told me about the company, he asked if I could help him get it off the ground. Helping turned into running everything. I built the website. I designed the branding. I found clients. I handled invoices, scheduling, hiring drivers, managing deliveries. Basically everything that makes a business actually function. My dad was technically the owner, but the truth was I was the one keeping the whole thing alive. At first I didn't mind. I thought we were building something together. The company started small, just a couple trucks doing local deliveries. But after a year, it was growing. After 3 years, we had contracts with several regional warehouses. By year 5, the business was bringing in serious money. And during all that time, I worked from a converted office space in my parents' house. It used to be an old storage room, but I renovated it myself. Bought desks, computers, filing cabinets, set up servers, networking equipment, the whole thing. That room became the headquarters of the company. But here's the important part. I paid for almost everything in that office myself, see? Early on, my dad kept saying the business couldn't afford upgrades yet, so if I wanted better equipment, I'd have to buy it. I didn't mind because I believed in the company. Every monitor, every hard drive, every piece of software, I paid for it. And because I handled the tech side, all the accounts, systems, and data were under my control. At the time, I didn't think twice about it, until Jake entered the picture. Jake had never been interested in the business before. In fact, he used to joke about how boring it sounded. But when the company started making real money, suddenly he wanted in. It started small. He asked if he could help out sometimes. Then he started showing up more often. Dad gave him a fancy title, operations manager, even though he had no experience. And slowly, things started changing. Dad began including Jake in conversations that used to be just between us. If I suggested something, Dad would look to Jake for approval. Jake started acting like he was in charge, even though he barely understood how the systems worked. One day he walked into the office, leaned against my desk and said, "You know, this place would look way better if it was redesigned." I remember staring at him and saying, "You mean the office I built?" He just shrugged. Things got worse over the next few months. Jake started bringing his friends around the office like it was a hangout spot. Dad kept defending him, saying he was learning the ropes. Then came the dinner. We were halfway through eating when Dad dropped the bomb. "We're taking your office space," he said casually. "Jake needs somewhere bigger to work." I thought he was joking. I asked, "What do you mean?" Dad sighed like I was being difficult. "You can work from the dining room or something. Jake's running operations now, and he needs a proper office." I looked at Jake. He didn't even look up from his phone. 5 years of work, reduced to that. But I didn't argue. I just nodded. "Okay," I said calmly. "I'll clear it." And the dinner continued like nothing had happened. Inside, though, something in me snapped, because that office wasn't just a room. It contained the entire infrastructure of the business. Every client contract, every scheduling system, every financial tracking tool, all the servers, databases, and backups. And most of it belonged to me. That night, I sat in the office for hours staring at the screens. I kept replaying the dinner in my head. The disrespect, the dismissal, the assumption that everything I built just belonged to them. So I started making a list. Hardware I purchased, software licenses registered to my name, cloud accounts billed to my card, backup servers I maintained. It was almost everything. Over the next 2 days, I started quietly preparing. I downloaded backups of everything I personally owned. I canceled subscriptions tied to my credit card. I began migrating data from the office servers to systems I controlled privately. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't delete files. I simply took my property with me. And that's when things started getting interesting. But before I tell you what happened next, I want to pause for a second and ask you something. Imagine you spent 5 years building a company for someone. You paid for the equipment. You ran the operations. And then one night over dinner, they casually told you they were giving your office and effectively your role to someone else. So tell me honestly, what would you have done in my place? Would you have just accepted it? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Because the next morning, I started clearing the office. At first, nobody noticed. Dad was out meeting a client, and Jake was asleep like usual. I packed my personal computer towers, my backup drives, my networking equipment. Then I unplugged the server rack I had installed 3 years earlier. Again, nothing malicious, just unplugging equipment I owned. By lunchtime, half the office was empty. Jake finally wandered in around 2 in the afternoon. He stopped in the doorway and looked around. "Why are you moving stuff?" I shrugged. "Dad said you're taking the office. I'm clearing it." He frowned. "Yeah, but why are you taking the computers?" "Because they're mine." The look on his face was priceless. He ran upstairs to find Dad, and about an hour later, Dad came storming down the stairs. "What the hell is going on?" I calmly explained. "You said Jake needed the office, so I'm clearing out my equipment." Dad looked around the room, confused. "This stuff is for the business." "No," I said. "I paid for it, remember? You said the company couldn't afford it." He didn't respond immediately. Then he said something that still makes me laugh. "Just leave it here. The company needs it." I shook my head. "No." That's when Jake finally realized something important. "Wait," he said slowly. "If you take all this, how are we supposed to run the system?" I looked at him. "That's a great question." By the end of the day, the office was empty except for a desk and chair. The servers that handled scheduling, gone. The workstations used to manage deliveries, gone. The network storage holding 5 years of organized data, migrated to my private system. The next morning, the phones started ringing. Drivers couldn't access their routes. Clients couldn't log into the tracking portal. Warehouse managers couldn't confirm delivery times. The business wasn't destroyed, but it was paralyzed. Dad called me into the kitchen looking furious. "What did you do?" I cleared my office. "You shut down the company." "No," I replied calmly. I removed my equipment. Jake tried to log into the system from his laptop and realized the company's software license had expired because I had canceled it. Again, my license. The next few hours were chaos. Dad calling clients, Jake trying to figure out systems he never bothered learning. Drivers calling nonstop, asking where their delivery instructions were. Finally, Dad turned to me and said the words I had been waiting for. "Fix this." And that's when I made my decision. "I can't," I said. "I don't work here anymore." The silence in that room was unbelievable. Dad stared at me like he had never seen me before. "What do you mean you don't work here?" "You gave my job to Jake." Jake opened his mouth to argue, but had nothing to say. Within 2 weeks, I had started my own logistics consulting company. Turns out when you spend 5 years building systems and relationships, people trust you. Several of the clients I had personally brought into the company called me asking if I was available for independent work. I didn't even have to ask them to switch. They offered. Dad's company didn't collapse completely, but it shrank. A lot. Jake lasted about 3 months before quitting because it was too stressful. And as for my dad, well, we barely talk now. Sometimes. I wonder if things could have gone differently if he had just respected the work I put in. But at the end of the day, I don't regret what I did, because I didn't destroy anything. I simply took back what belonged to me. And honestly, that moment at dinner was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to stop building someone else's dream and start building my own. If you made it this far, I really want to know what you think. Was I wrong for clearing the office the way I did? Or would you have done the exact same thing in my situation? If you were on my side, go ahead and like this video. And if you enjoy stories like this, family drama, shocking betrayals, and real-life revenge, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And seriously, share your final thoughts about this whole mess down in the comments. I read a lot of them. and some of your perspectives are honestly wild. Anyway, thanks for listening to my story, and I'll see you all in the next one.